let's talk about compliments. Of course, being a fragrance reviewer, I get loads of compliments. All day, every day, wherever I go, compliment there, compliment there, compliments, bam, 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 hit me in the face all the time. It just never stops. I get tired of it. I really should stop giving myself so many compliments. Okay, I'm selling out a little bit, making a video on complimented fragrances, but you know what, I've not done this before. I've not done a most complimented video before. Some people are doing them every couple of months, so I think I'm entitled to make just one. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really get many compliments. I get positive comments from friends, family, work colleagues, people that know me, people that know I'm into fragrances. I'll get the odd unsolicited comment, but it is very, very rare. I think it is for most people as well. Unsolicited comments are quite rare, particularly I feel here in the UK. People can be a little bit inhibited and they don't really want to make a point of asking you what your fragrance is and telling you that they like it, unless they really love it that much they want to buy it for their boyfriend. But for the most part, people aren't going to just stop you in the middle of the street or in a shop and tell you you're wearing an amazing fragrance. Yes, of course it happens, it just doesn't really happen to me that often. Happens more in situations where people are less inhibited, so maybe if you're going clubbing or if you go out and you're in a bar, people are drinking, so they're less inhibited. In those situations, in my experience anyway, I feel people are most likely to give you a compliment on the fragrance you're wearing. But I do get positive comments, even though they are from people that know me, and maybe I wouldn't get those comments if they didn't know that I was into my fragrances. Nevertheless, I thought it would still be fun to make a video of 10 fragrances that I feel I've had the most positive comments on. Not for the views, alright, maybe it's for the views, but don't worry about that. Let's get into the list. So I'm starting with one of my favourite fragrances. This is from the house of Nasomatto, which actually is one of my favourite houses, I think, across the board. Their offerings are just great quality. So the fragrance I'm talking about is Pardon. When you hear people talking about Pardon, you often hear the word masterpiece, and I think I would agree, actually. It is just a stunning, stunning scent, one of the best in my collection. So Nasomatto don't list official notes, but I get from this like an indulgent dark chocolate. There's some patchouli, there's some magnolia in here, so it's got a floral, but it's definitely not a feminine leaning floral. It certainly has a lot of masculine punch to this fragrance. I remember I was wearing this for one of my Christmas do's at work a couple of years ago, and as I was saying, we were in a situation where people have had a drink, so they're more likely to let you know that they enjoy what you're wearing. And this guy put his arm around me, he was like, "Chris, whatever you're wearing tonight, it smells amazing." So, you know, there we go, unsolicited compliment. But he loved it, and a few other people on that evening loved it. We were on a dance floor, so people are in close proximity, people are drunk, so they're more likely to mention it. But this, I think, draws people in because it's got a punchiness, it's very assertive, it's different, it's quite unique smelling. It doesn't smell like designer fragrances that most people are used to smelling, but it's got enough sweetness and enough smoothness for it to be mass appealing. So it balances this assertive punch with its mass appeal, and I think that's why people really enjoy smelling this one. I'm certainly pleased to have this in my collection, and I compliment myself every time I wear it. The next one is from another of my favourite houses. I just love this house because they make very mass appealing scents, but with fantastic performance. Great natural materials go into their fragrances, so they last and people just smell them and enjoy them. This is a great brand that if you're thinking of getting into niche, it's a very accessible way into niche. So my favourite from the house of Parfums de Marly is Carlisle. So from Carlisle, I get this lovely, rich, creamy fruitiness. There's some spices in here as well. It really reminds me of a cinnamon spiced apple dessert. As well as that, it's not just gourmand, it's not just a cloying, sweet gourmand fragrance, it's got a lovely backbone of woods in here. I think there's some Gaiac wood in here. Almost at times, I feel there's maybe some oud, not because it's skanky, but just because it's got such a punch to the fragrance. So it's got that great backbone to it. It's got the sweet dessert-like mass appeal. It's rich, it's luxurious, it's classy. As with all Parfums and Marley fragrances, this one is absolute beast mode. This is possibly the strongest. Maybe Ojan is as strong as this one for me. Herod, I love, but not quite as big on performance, but Carlisle is a big performer. Big projection, big longevity. You're gonna be projecting for around 8 to 10 hours. That's not just the longevity, that is the projection. So this projects really well all throughout the life of this fragrance. So I think this one has got me a lot of positive comments because it's so big, it fills the room, everyone smells it, and just by law of averages, the more people that smell it, the more comments you're gonna get. This one is from Tom Ford. Don't think you can really have a most complimented list without at least one Tom Ford, but there are two on this list. This is just the first one. This one is a little brother to Tuscan Leather. It's the more mass appealing version of that DNA, which is Ombre Leather. Honestly, this is just one of those fragrances that ticks all the boxes for me. It feels interesting and satisfying enough for myself to wear for it to be pleasing to me. But because it is a little smoother than Tuscan Leather, it has more mass appeal than that fragrance. So it gets more positive comments. My wife doesn't really like Tuscan Leather. She told me so. I was gutted because I love the complexity of Tuscan Leather. And that is a common thing. Many people will say that their female partners do not enjoy Tuscan Leather. You don't really hear that about Ombre Leather. You hear the opposite, in fact. You hear that people get compliments and lots of positive comments wearing Ombre Leather. So it's a little creamier for me than Tuscan Leather. It's not quite as punchy, the leather isn't as sharp. Like I say, it's smooth, it's mass appealing. Personally, I prefer the complexity of Tuscan Leather, but we're talking about fragrances that have got me positive comments. I remember I wore this for work one day, and someone who never really mentions anything about fragrances that I'm wearing, she said, you know, whatever you're wearing, it smells really good. So very positive comment from this, and I've had others as well. So if you're looking for a fragrance that is reasonably priced, because this did used to be in the private blend, if you want to be able to please those around you and you want something that is satisfying for you to wear as well, that works for many occasions, many situations, then I think Ombre Leather is a great option. So this next one, I've just had a little sniff and I realise I've not worn this in a long time, so I'm definitely going to wear this soon. And I've just smelled it and suddenly remembered why I do love this one so much. It's from the house of Azzaro, and this is Wanted by Night. So I've just got to have a little spray in the air of this. Oh, this is amazing. So what you're going to get from Azzaro Wanted by Night is this tobacco and cinnamon bomb. It's sweet, it's masculine. For a designer fragrance, it's got surprisingly great performance. I get a big projection off this. I get great longevity. It's got a bit of a bad boy quality to it. I don't know why bad boys touch their jacket collars, but you know, that's how I do it. So I love this fragrance, and one of the best things about this is you can now buy a bottle like this, a 50ml bottle, for around £30. I assume in the States it's the equivalent, $30 around there. So if you're thinking of getting a nice mass appealing designer fragrance, Azzaro Wanted by Night is a good one. We go in niche for the next one, and this one packs a real punch. It's interesting, but it's not too complex that it doesn't lose its mass appeal. I'm talking about a fragrance from the house of Initio, and this one is Oud for Greatness. Oh, this is just a beautiful scent. I get this dry, sweet spiciness from it. The spices are dessert-like spices, so there's saffron and there's nutmeg. I also get like a nice creaminess, like a dry creaminess from it as well. The oud in this is not very prominent, it's not skanky in the slightest, so don't be put off by the name of oud in the title of this one. I'm guessing it is a note that is more supporting and adding backbone to the fragrance rather than it being too detectable itself. It's got lots of depth, fantastic performance. This lasts pretty much until you have a shower. And if you get this on clothes, then until you wash those clothes, you're going to be smelling oud for greatness. I got one of the best comments that I've ever had from my wife wearing this one. She'll often only compliment me on a fragrance if I ask her if she likes it and put my arm under her nose, and then she'll tell me if she likes it or not. And sometimes they might range from, yeah, it's good, to, yeah, it's really good. But with this one, she said, at the end of the day, whatever you've been wearing today, that I really liked it, and it lasted all day as well. So we'd been on a day out, we'd been on the train, so I'd sprayed this early in the morning, so I must have had this on for 8 to 10 hours, and she said she really enjoyed it. So there you go, unsolicited female compliment. Yes.
Join the Scent Geeks every Monday as we podcast about all things fragrance. You'll find us anywhere you can usually find a podcast. Links are in the description below this video. See you there, geeks.
This one is a sweet, sexy sandalwood fragrance. It's my favourite from Byron Puffins. I think it's their most mass appealing scent that they do. You'll have heard me talk about this before, most likely. It's the Chronic. For me, this has got a really gorgeous, sweet, toffee-like smell to it, but there's an airiness in here. I think there's a bit of pepper, and it really lifts the fragrance. So it has this kind of bright airiness balanced with this very sweet kind of toffee, cinnamon accord. So it never becomes too cloying. It's a really nicely balanced fragrance. Performance on this is fantastic. It'll last you all day. It's going to fill a room, and it's such a pleasing smell that because it is such a big fragrance in terms of performance, lots of people around you are going to smell it, so you're likely to get a few positive comments. I've never had a negative comment about this fragrance. Everyone who I've introduced to it has loved it, and I think you would too. Next, we're going back to Tom Ford, and this time we're diving into the Private Blend. This is one of my all-time favourite fragrances. I smelled this once and it really just got me hooked, and that's how I ended up getting more into fragrances, partly because of this fragrance. I smelled this in an airport duty-free, and when I smelled it, I just could not believe that fragrances could smell that good, because before this, I'd been used to designer scents. I am, of course, talking about the beauty that is oud wood. Not really too much to say about oud wood that you haven't heard before. This is a gorgeous mix of woods, spices, vanilla and amber. It's sexy as hell, and those aren't my words, those are the words of females who I've heard over the years say that they really love this fragrance. I've had lots of positive comments while wearing this fragrance. I feel like it's very sensual. I think this could be a perfect signature scent, but I think it works really well as a date night scent. And I think the reason for that is because you want people to be quite close to you. This is not a big projecting fragrance, certainly not beast mode like some of the other fragrances on this list. In 2007, it took the world by storm, and it's still going strong. This still must be one of Tom Ford's biggest selling fragrances. So the performance isn't amazing, it's not beast mode like some of the other fragrances, but it's okay. If you did want to boost the performance of this, you could maybe wear it with one of the Eccentric Molecules fragrances. You could wear Moleculo 2 to add some extra ambroxan in there, or Moleculo 1, and both of those fragrances may just help boost this and give it a little bit more longevity. You can always apply it to clothes, or you can always reapply if you wanted to. But if you've not tried oud wood, do get your nose on it because it's an absolute stunner. The next one's a designer. This is from the house of Mugler, and this is challenging my favourite from the house, which is Pure Havane, and I think it's kind of neck and neck at the moment. I enjoy this just as much as Pure Havane. I'm talking about Pure Malt. I think the reason this one gets more positive comments than Pure Havane is I think it's just a more mass appealing, more fun fragrance. I love Pure Havane, but it's a little richer with that tobacco note in there. But Pure Malt is just a fragrance that you want to wear to the club or to the bars. It's got a great projection. It's got that sweet addictive quality of that Amen DNA, but it's got a sweet booziness added to it. George, the fragrance apprentice, and I, we recently went out together in town to bars and clubs, and we both wore Pure Malt, and throughout the course of the night we both got several unsolicited compliments. Again, you're in that situation where people are boozing, so they're more likely to mention what you're wearing. If you're going out, if you're going to bars and clubs, you might want to think about getting this fragrance. Even if you're not going to bars and clubs, you still might want to think about getting this fragrance. The next one is still currently my favourite fragrance of all time. It's from the house of Roja Parfums. It's Enigma. I was so pleased when they came out with this Parfum cologne line, because I do have the Parfum and the Eau de Parfum version of Enigma, and I had got some positive comments, mainly from friends who knew that fragrance, and you know, they would let me know if they thought that it smelled good. But this Parfum cologne, as with a lot of the others in the Parfum cologne line, adds more citruses, so it makes them more cologne-like in the top. So because of the added citrus, it's a little more diffusive, so the projection is a little more widespread, so more people are going to smell this. So I feel that this does have more mass appeal than the other versions of Enigma. The reason I love Enigma so much is the scent DNA just seems so unique and intoxicating. We get this gorgeous cognac, tobacco, vanilla. I can't get enough of this. A few people criticize it because they can't get past that Coca-Cola association with the opening of this fragrance, but personally, I adore it. So up until this point of the list, there was no order. All those fragrances were just fragrances that have got me positive comments. It didn't range from least comments to most comments. But this last one, has by far got me the most positivity and the most compliments in my life. And the reason for that is because I've worn it more than any of the other fragrances in this list for a good 15 or so years. This was my signature scent. This was all I wore. So I wore this all through university. I wore this for clubbing. This was kind of a coming of age fragrance for me. It's a stunning fragrance. It's been out since 1995. It's still going strong. It still gets a lot of love, and rightly so. It is Jean Paul Gaultier's La Malle. The thing about this fragrance is people know it and people love it. This was a game changer when it came out. People take great delight on a night out by saying to you, I know what you're wearing Jean Paul Gaultier La Malle. It used to happen to me almost every time when I was younger, not so much these days, I'm not going out as much, but when I was going out a lot to bars and clubs, nearly every time I wore this, someone would come up to me and say, are you wearing Jean Paul Gaultier? Or they might even just walk past and just let me know and shout it as they carried on walking. So it got you talking to people. This fragrance must be one of the most social fragrances I've ever owned. It's a great icebreaker. It's been on the market for a while now. I still feel personally that the DNA is modern. It's a lovely, sweet, modern twist on the classic masculine fougere fragrance. So we've got some lavender, but it really sweetens things up with tonka bean. And it's one of the most mass appealing, crowd pleasing fragrances that I own. This formulation is a more modern formulation, so it is not as potent as it used to be, which is a real shame. But Dua have just come out with a fragrance called Dua Man. I have done a review of that, so you can check that one out up here if you'd like to hear more about it. And Dua Man is an inspiration of vintage Jean Paul Gaultier. So if you pine for those days when La Malle was this bomb of mint and lavender and tonka bean and this green, almost dirty earthiness that we used to have, that we don't really get in this, which is a much smoother, not as bold fragrance, sweeter perhaps. It just doesn't have that edge, does not have that edge anymore. If you pine for that vintage formulation, maybe have a look at Dua's version, which is called Dua Man. I'll leave a link in the description below the video if you're interested in that one. It's certainly got me more into wearing La Malle again because it takes me right back to those days in my youth, all those great associations of growing up, and still enjoying wearing it. So let me know what you think about La Malle. What do you think about this modern formulation? Do you think it's okay, or do you wish it was as potent as it used to be? Okay, so there we go. 10 fragrances that over the years have got me some lovely positive comments. Now what I do want to say is, a lot of comments are not unsolicited. If you want people to compliment you on your fragrance, then you've got to get talking to people. You've got to be social, you've got to engage with people, you've got to go to places where you're meeting people and where you're going to get to know people, and then people are more likely to say, you know, really enjoy what you're wearing. So that is how you're going to get most of your compliments. So go out there, meet people, be social, and let the world experience how good you smell. Okay, so that's my list. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about my choices. I would love to hear your maybe top 3 most complimented fragrances. Drop some comments down below. Let's get a conversation going. If you mention some great fragrances that get some nice comments and compliments and I don't have them in my collection, then I might just have to purchase those, because I know we all like to wear fragrances for ourselves. A lot of people do want to wear fragrances only for compliments. For me personally, first and foremost, it's for myself. If I do get a positive comment or compliment, it's a nice bonus. And you know, we can't deny that it feels good if someone gives us a compliment. So we do like them. All right, that's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, keep tuning into FM and keep smelling good.